Indie games! Indie games! Indie games! Indie games! Indie games! Hi everyone, I'm Dale, verified video game boy, and this is IGN Decoded. Let's get it started! Indie games have come a long way. Since the time when it was only super hard platformers, you know? For a while, the poster boys for indie games are like Super Meat Boy, you know, Fez, Braid, right? They all just take the Mario formula and just kind of deconstruct it. That's another show. We're not doing that right now. But since then, indie games have kind of expanded. It's become anything that you could think of, all right? You could make houses, you could talk to animals and all kinds of things. That's even a game about managing graveyards. You know, indie games can truly be whatever you want, and it's an essential part of the video game experience in 2021. It's even come to the point where they beat out AAA games in getting Game of the Year. Talking to you, Final Fantasy 15. In recent years, indie games like The Outer Wilds, Undertale, and Untitled Goose Game have all won Game of the Year. But what makes it award-winning? What's the secret sauce? Secret sauce, right? The magic formula that kind of makes us drawn to these games in the first place. Well, let's find out with the help of some special friends. Wow. Okay, so traditionally, indie games are games that are not made by the major publishers and the big boy developers. So you won't see names like Nintendo, Capcom, EA, Ubisoft, Microsoft, Sony, Omastar, Raichu, Arcanine, Pikachu. You know, you get what I mean. You get what I mean, right? You know, big boys. Fun fact, one of the earliest indie game hits was Doom in 1993. It was also one of the first games to kind of spread its wings through the internet as shareware. Even today, the internet's kind of your main source to distribute and to play indie games. From there, modern indie game developers all kind of got their start through Flash games, through websites like Newgrounds and Miniclip. Games like RuneScape and Castle Crashers kind of come to mind as the gems of this Flash generation. RuneScape still holds up, by the way. Still fun. The music, pops. People say that, right? People say pops.
I think Flash game is one of the, the catalyst for Indonesian game industry, because it opens a lot of doors. So, you know, before 2008, we do have one, maybe two studios in Indonesia that's kind of working in the shadows. But during those era, as an industry is basically non-existent, right? And suddenly around 2008, there's a huge boom in terms of game developers making Flash games, because now the opportunity is there. It's you can now make games, have that basically become your career or your main source of income. In 2009, 2010, I would say maybe 100, small studios of Flash game developers started sprouting all across Indonesia, and that become I would say primordial soup or something like that for Indonesian game industry, and it's been growing ever since.
Once Steam opened up the floodgates, everybody was in. All bets were off. The now defunct Stream Greenlight initiative was where you would find the next big indie hit. It seemed for a while, every Tim, Dick, and Jason were making their own indie game. Yeah. Try saying that 10 times fast. Tim, Dick, and Jason. Indie games. Point was, just like all of them, the success of these indie games were all varied. All right, you could have a game that had a conventional gaming kind of shelf life, like Shovel Knight. You know, that lasted a few years. It had DLC. And then you got really unicorn indie hits, okay? I'm talking about Minecraft. Dude, Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the world, bought Minecraft. That's how big indie games were getting at this point. And of course, you have more niche games that, that still has their audiences today. Even though it's a little weird, it's a little, you might like it. I don't know, but I wouldn't play Five Nights at Freddy's. Creepy ass there. And then you even have late bloomer indie games, all right? I'm talking about Among Us. Released in 2018, it only got popular 2 years later when everybody was locked up in their homes in a pandemic, which is incredible. It's crazy, unprecedented. So, okay, some might say that the size of the development team kind of determines whether a game is indie or not. But you have games like Stardew Valley, where only one person worked on it. Incredible, right? But then on the other side of the coin, we have something a little more questionable. We got Cyberpunk 2077, which is technically an indie game, but half of Poland worked on it. So where does the line kind of get drawn, you know?
I think the height of indie games, that's when Valve or Steam started their Greenlight program, where anyone could submit a game as long as it gets voted in. And at the time, Minecraft was a big thing, and Notch was kind of, he was holding the banner, I guess, for everyone to see that, oh, okay, you can make the game with a small team. And even people like Jonathan Blow made his own game in a one-man team. Yeah, an indie game company or indie game team is really not defined by its team size. It's the vision that they have. And you really have to stick to your guns, and you have to stick to your original vision, basically. And I see a lot of the game companies that have survived are those who had a clear vision on what they want, the kind of experience they want to convey and build, and they just build on that rather than spreading their expertise around. Because you end up just doing something else. It's really just finding your niche. You have to find your niche soon enough. Yeah.
So, according to an August 2020 infographic by VG Insights, about 1/3 of all indie games are doing okay, doing quite well. Almost every one in 5 indie games would make about $50,000 US, right? But that doesn't mean the game is profitable or it's a good investment. It could mean a lot of things. Like, let's take Stardew Valley. That was only one guy. Maybe 50,000 covers everything, right? But what if it's a much bigger development team? Maybe not everybody is getting their cut. So let's check this out, right? Stardew Valley, one guy, $50,000. That seems to be okay, right? That math kind of checks out. But what if you're a development team of 50 people? Doesn't seem like $50,000 is gonna cut it, you know what I mean?
I feel like it's different per studio. There are definitely studios that value awards. So if the game is critically acclaimed, one example that I can think of would be Kentucky Route Zero. That is a commercial success, but has won a lot of awards. I think that game fits that. It's a genuine essential game of the decade, but not a lot of people. It's not as much as Valheim or Genshin Impact or Among Us in terms of player base. And then of course you have people who define success as a metric as the long tail or the long-term value of the game. This can be measured by if you're going looking at data, that there are some games that sell more if the sale is 60% versus 90%, just because people feel like that is the amount that they want to assign to that game. So that's also a version of success, I feel. And then of course, last that is on the top of my head is the impact that you have on people. So how memorable the game is, even just for Florence, which is a short Apple Arcade game. You could play it in one sitting, but so many people have felt that deep connection or have experienced that breakup and the going after the dreams, that even though it's a short game, that still is a game that I personally remember just because of the effect it had on me. So I feel like those 4, so long-term value of your game, the number of players that you reach, the amount of awards that the game wins, and then the impact that you have to your players.
Which brings us to Coffee Talk, developed by Toge Productions. Now, we've spoken at length about Coffee Talk before, but for those of you who are not in the know, right? It's a cafe simulator. Basically, you play as a barista, you serve coffee to all these mythical creatures. You got mermaids, vampires, werewolves. They all got their own personal problems, and you kind of just gotta hear them out. just talk to them. It's fun. It's been described as heartwarming and overall just a fun, cozy, good time. And definitely chill. This is a game you can chill and vibe to, So the big thing about Coffee Talk is it's been nominated for the DICE Awards under the Independent Games category, which is a big thing for a Southeast Asian game. What makes it an even bigger deal though is that it's kind of nominated alongside Hades, Kentucky Route Zero, Noida, all these kind of bigger indie games in a sense, but only bigger because they're not from here, right? You hear it from outside media and stuff. So yeah, pretty big deal for the guys who make Coffee Talk, you know what I'm saying?
I remember one day I was like working on something and it was raining. It was a heavy rain. It was a very cold night and I was drinking a hot green tea latte. And it was around the time when, the lo-fi hip-hop channels are starting to be popular. So I think I was listening to Nujabes and then I was drinking that hot green tea latte while looking outside to the outside windows to the rainy night. And I was like, man, this is such a nice experience. Like, how can I emulate this to video game? Of course, I took a lot of inspiration. I took a lot of inspiration from Valhalla and Bar Oasis, which are two games about drinking. And then there's this manga called Bartender. It's a manga about people that are in problems and they come to the bar and the bartender gave them drinks. And then there's also this Netflix series called Midnight Diner. It was a heavy influence on Coffee Talk. So from all those things, and of course from the clips you see on YouTube, the lo-fi hip-hop clips, I kind of got the inspiration that I want to make a game like this. So it has to be like a visual novel where you serve drinks. You don't have dialogue options because you can only suggest people with your drinks and so on. And it has to be chill. Like the main keyword that we stuck throughout the development, whatever decision we wanted to make, we always have to remember one keyword, and that thing is chill. This game has to be chill. Whatever you do with the game, it has to be chill. So yeah, this is basically how Coffee Talk came to be. I cried when the game launched because I didn't expect people to be so kind to the games. I was like, people are so nice about it. They said a lot of nice things. Like, I remember the first 2 months after the game came out, I got like almost a dozen DMs saying thanks, and I don't know how many mentions that say how the game helped them. I wouldn't say it helped them with their depression, but at least it helped them in some way. How people said it calmed them, how they said that when they cannot sleep, they just turn on Coffee Talk and just enjoy the vibes. It's just like, I just wanted to make something relaxing. I wanted to tell stories, and seeing how it impacted people, and for some of them, the game impacts them on personal level. It's just, I never expected this to happen.
So what is it about cozy, heartwarming, non-violent games that kind of get people hooked on, Are these kind of games the winning formula for upcoming indie games, especially those from Southeast Asia, to kind of emulate? Should we see more cafe simulators? Should we see more farming simulators? Or should we just have games where you just talk?
We're really all over the place. Even in Malaysia, we've got all kinds of games. We have 7-bit games making rhythm games. We have One Hasmir making 3D action games. We have Eximius or Box Studios making realistic first-person RTS shooters. We have Persona Theory making narrative games. So yeah, there's no one flavor, and I'm really happy that we're not locked into just one flavor. It showcases like how diverse our talents are. I think we should be really happy about that. And even in Indonesia, you can see, other than Coffee Talk, they've made a lot of really unique and really cool action games. So there's no one flavor to it.
I think each developer have to find their own calling, whether like, is it like creating games that tells a story, or is it like a game that focuses on mechanics, because everybody have their own like vision or directions, and I believe like they have to find their own calling, or like what they want to do, or like what kind of impact that they want to bring to the world, and try to execute on that. Because like I think there's a lot of roads that leads to Rome, right? So you just have to pick the one that suits you and suits your circumstances, or like your resources, and try to deliver the best that you can.
The winning formula is is that one, you're prepared when it happens, or you get yourself prepared and hire the right people. Second, and the most important thing is that, of course, you have to make a really good game. I feel that, and I might get canceled for this, but I'll say it, that there's a lot of people that just slap on Southeast Asia or identity into their games and then say that, you know, you should support this because I'm from Southeast Asia, I'm underrepresented in the games industry. And that's, I feel like that's a cop-out. Like, you still have to make a really good game that people will like and people will love. So definitely make games that you want to make, and make games that you feel like people would love and enjoy as much as you do. And then recognition could come after.
So yeah, a non-violent game, cozy game, relaxing game is going to stay, and it's going to stay for a long time. As for, is it going to be the one that brings Southeast Asia to the world? I'm not sure, because the best thing about Southeast Asia, the most precious things about our region is the cultures we had. And to be honest, I don't think a lot of us haven't utilized them more. Like, I'm guilty for this because Coffee Talk is not set in Jakarta or Singapore, it's set in Seattle. Even Coffee Talk is not really Southeast Asian game because people don't realize that it was made in Indonesia until they know who the developers are. So it definitely won't be the kind of game that kick off Southeast Asia, but it's kind of ironic because the game that showcased Southeast Asia pretty well was made in America, Indivisible by Lab Zero. Yeah. So I think if we could make something like that, it could be something that introduced Southeast Asia to the world.
So personally, if you ask me, I kind of think indie games should be treated like indie music, where you're not just selling an idea, you're kind of selling a lifestyle. The way you think, the way you dress is kind of shaped by the music you listen to, especially indie artists, where they kind of wear outlandish clothes, or hell, they even wear super normal clothes. Normcore is a thing. So I think that's something that indie games should strive for as well. So this is kind of a high bar, but Undertale, right? That sparked the whole movement, kind of changed the way people talk online, how they do their fan art, what kind of music they listen to, you know? Of course, not every indie game should strive for that, but I think that kind of spirit, that sort of creative spirit should shine through in every indie game. You know, is the relatability you have with the game developers. Because if somebody normal, if somebody that's just like you and me can make it that far with just an indie game they made in their spare time, you know, what's stopping me? What's stopping you from making the next great indie hit? Kind of something to think about, huh? So, in the comments, tell us what you like about indie games. What are indie games? What indie games should I play? I don't know, because I've been Dale, the verified video game boy, and this was IGN Decoded. And I'll be back. You mark my words, I will be back for this show. We don't know what we're going to talk about next time, but I will be back. You ain't seen the last of me. I'm the real verified video game man. You never know, dude.